Good morning and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Executive Committee. I am Betsy Hodges, Chair of the committee, joined this morning by committee members Council Member Gordon, Council Vice President Glidden, and Council President Barb Johnson. We are a quorum of the committee and can conduct the city's business. We have 6 items before us on the agenda today. The 6th will be potentially a closed meeting, which we will adjourn to room 315 for. But the first 5 items are discussion items. We will go to the first item and then have a discussion of items 2, 3, and 4 considered together. Go on to item 5 and then potentially the closed session in room 315. So the first item on the agenda, appointed position, Deputy Director, Fire Inspection Services. Good morning, Ms. Nelms.
Good morning, Mayor Hodges, members of the Executive Committee. The Regulatory Services Department is proposing to establish one new appointed position that will perform in the leadership role of the Fire Inspection Service Division leader and report directly to the Director of Regulatory Services. The position will oversee the Fire Inspection Services Division and will be responsible for operations related to fire and housing maintenance code enforcement in the city of Minneapolis. This includes the management of staff of 17 and the associated workload. The certified job title, that means classified position, Manager Inspection, Fire Inspection Services, grade 11 position, has been supervising the Fire Inspection Services Division in the Regulatory Services Department. That position is vacant and it will be inactivated with the approval of this position. At this time, we are asking that you approve the new position titled Deputy Director, Fire Inspection Services, that you find that this position meets the criteria in section 20.1010 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances, City Council to establish positions, that you approve the new appointed position salary structure, which has a minimum salary of $91,534 and a top rate of $108,508. The Director of Regulatory Services, Noah Schuckman, is here if you have any questions about the organizational structure of the department or why this request is being made.
Are there questions about this proposed position? I will move approval of the staff recommendation. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Schuckman, for that. And once again, give our congratulations to Mr. Sayers on his life-saving efforts as a fire inspector. Items 2, 3, and 4, Mr. Cronk is bringing before us, and I think consideration of them together is in order. So why don't they are item 2, appointed official salary administration plan modifications, item 3, performance appraisal policy revisions, and item 4, severance pay for appointed employees ordinance. So, Mr. Cronk.
Thank you. Mayor Hodges, committee members, Spencer Cronk, City Coordinator. Item number 2 before you, the appointed officials salary administration plan modifications. If you recall, in 2015, the Minneapolis City Council approved a revised system for paying appointed officials. The system was changed from a 4-step plan to an 8-step plan. At that time, we promised to return with a recommendation to revise the appointed employee salary administration plan, and today we wish to present our recommendations for that plan. The plan recommends a number of things. It first revised the title such that it applies only to appointed officials. This carves out politically appointed employees. The goal of the plan is to maintain an external market competitiveness to attract and retain leadership talent, also to assure internal equity among our appointed officials, and to provide flexibility and ease of administration. The plan memorializes the 8-step salary plan adopted by the Council in 2015. It continues the market survey every 3 years under the direction of our Chief Human Resource Officer. It shifts the responsibility for adjustments from the City Council to the City Coordinator in consultation with the Chief Human Resource Officer and CFO in the following ways. The City Coordinator may approve annual adjustments up to 2.5%. The Coordinator may approve market adjustments up to 2.5%. It articulates the methodology for approving starting salaries above Step 3. It allows simple title changes with the approval of the Chief Human Resource Officer. It allows one-time minor job evaluation changes up to 45 points or 1 grade level with the approval of the Chief Human Resource Officer. Any additional changes must be approved by the City Council. All adjustments will be reported quarterly by the City Coordinator to this Executive Committee and the Ways and Means Committee, and step progression will continue to require documentation of satisfactory or better performance for the positions below Charter Department Head, and thus item 3, which I'll speak to in a minute. It retains for the Council, however, that the Council must approve all new positions and their salaries as they currently do. Adjustments annual or market greater than 2.5% must be approved by the City Council, and salary exception to the adopted compensation plan must be approved by the City Council. And adjustments for a highly valuable employee also must be approved by the City Council. So that is a summary of the plan that is before you. Again, I want to thank staff for their hard work in putting that plan together and presenting it at this time. We are recommending approval of it and referral to Ways and Means. It is part and parcel with item number 3, which is relatively straightforward, is the performance appraisal policy revisions. We are asking for approval of revisions to the performance appraisal policy to standardize the performance management process across the organization. It is relatively straightforward and meant to align our performance management system across the enterprise. This proposed policy has been reviewed by our Labor Management Committee and the department heads, and any feedback that they have given was incorporated into the document that you see before you. All stakeholders have been supportive of this policy revision, but staff thought it was important to link the salary administration plan, item number 2, and this plan together. Item number 4 is the severance pay for appointed employees ordinance. This is, I will be brief in this because there is no action requested from the Executive Committee. However, it has been past practice to make a reference to the subject matter of a proposed ordinance change regarding personnel before any action is taken in subsequent committees. Staff is recommending 2 changes to our current city ordinance, section 20.456, titled 2005 Severance Pay for Appointed Employees. The first is to eliminate paragraph C of the section to conform with state law. This section has to do with severance pay when this committee does not intend to reappoint a department head who is appointed for a term. Although we have not encountered a situation where this would be an issue, to the extent that section 20.456C conflicts with Minnesota statute 465.722, then we must repeal our ordinance to conform with state law. Second is to rewrite section 20.456 so it applies only to charter department heads. In conversation with HR and the city's attorney's office, this ordinance was added in 2005 in response to some challenges the city faced in recruiting candidates for city leadership positions. What we have found, however, is that the section was most important for those department heads that are appointed by this committee. We are proposing, therefore, to limit the scope of section 20.456 to that pool. This would be consistent with other jurisdictions, including Hennepin County. So staff from the City Attorney's Office and HR are working on language that will be provided to the Ways and Means Committee, where this agenda item is currently sitting. So again, no action is requested, only to inform this committee of the proposal. I'm happy to stand for any questions on items 2, 3, and 4, and recommend approval of items 2 and 3 and referral to Ways and Means.
Questions for Mr. Cronk? Council Vice President Glidden.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Some kind of smaller questions. I'm actually curious on the performance appraisal policy, if we could hear a little bit more about how this requirement will be implemented, and whether there will be some system put in place so that if managers or supervisors are not in fact conducting the annual performance appraisals of those that they supervise, what will be the way to be on top of that and then be able to coach those supervisors on up to department heads of perhaps not complying with this requirement for the city. I do think it's really important, and I think we often struggle with how to get that consistency across, and including at the highest levels. So.
Madam Mayor, Council Vice President Glidden, That's a great question, and I'll invite our Chief Human Resources Officer to add a few words as well. But I know from my experience in other organizations, it was critical that the leadership at the top was monitoring this type of behavior in a very strategic way. So, for example, at the state, we had the governor's office review the compliance with the performance appraisal policy even on a weekly basis. If there was a goal to have 100% compliance, that every employee in that organization was receiving a performance review, that we would track that on a regular basis. And so I know as I sit here, after this policy is approved and as we think about the procedures from that, that'll be a critical part of it, is that active monitoring both from the city coordinator and also by department heads as they ensure that everyone in their department and their division is receiving a performance review. But I'll let the Chief Human Resources Officer, Patient Ferguson, add a few words as well.
Ms. Ferguson.
Mayor Hodges, members of the Executive Committee, we are currently working, thanks to previous investments by the City Council regarding our halogen system, which is a software that is specifically designed to provide real-time information regarding our performance review system. What we're currently doing is working with our internal team to actually design that process to make it efficient so that when the information for employees, it already goes into the halogen system. And then we're also redesigning it so we'll get the information on appointed positions. That information will be put in the system, and then we will have a real efficient way to be able to pull that information and as Mr. Cronk said, provide that information to the key leaders so that they have a way of tracking that information in terms of who has received performance reviews, who has not received performance reviews. And we're also working to strengthen the procedures based on the existing performance review policy to make that even more clear of what that will be and what that will look like.
So I guess then my follow-up questions are just, and I don't know, I'm not expecting an answer maybe right now, but one is I'm curious about the timeliness of being able to put those processes in place, because it sounds like we may have the tools to be able to monitor this, but maybe we need to activate those tools in some way to be able to fully see who is in compliance or not. And then I guess my other question would be, how are we going to communicate with department heads about this as an expectation of their leadership to review this, and how are we going to continue to ensure on an annual basis we are clear in measuring what's the level of compliance in completing this requirement?
Vice President Glidden and members of the Executive Committee, most of the system for employees has already been designed. So, for example, just last week, I received an initial report as part of our overall process of where departments stand in terms of their performance review. So that's already done. I already have also started working with an internal team to add this additional piece. So I fully anticipate that this system will be up and running by no later than the next upcoming quarter, because we already have the system in place. We've already put the system in place and have a reporting capability for existing employees. And the only piece that we actually really need to do is the piece that is in alignment with our department heads as well as with our other leaders within the enterprise.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much. I also had some questions or thoughts about the performance appraisal process. Sorry about that. I also had some questions about on the performance appraisal policy and process. My first had to do with the politically appointed staff. The policy says that they are shall not apply to politically appointed staff. And does that include anybody besides the staff within each council office, where there's 2 staff that are appointed and the staff within the mayor's office that are appointed? Or does that encompass all the positions we're talking about that don't apply?
Councilmember Gordon, members of the Executive Committee, when the information in the performance appraisal policy is of the politically appointed staff, this is talking about the aides to the city council. Because the other people, if there are individuals, for example, if there are people that are appointed over and beyond the aides, they are included in the performance review, appraisal review policy.
Okay.
So this is dealing with the workplace. This is dealing with the enterprise, and anyone who is appointed, but they are part of the enterprise, that is who this policy is reflecting of. This is what this policy is for.
Okay, so it says politically appointed staff, including those appointed by the mayor and individual city council members, and that's actually the exclusive group is just the aides within those offices. That's all of them. If a council member or an elected official wanted to do a performance appraisal and get assistance from HR to do that with their staff, would that be available to us?
Councilmember Gordon, members of the executive committee, we would be very willing and open to provide additional support if that is something that individual council members would like to do.
And the thought was just to exclude these city employees because the elected officials deserve to have the discretion over how they want to do their own performance appraisals?
Well, part of that is because when we look at what we track from an enterprise-wide perspective, what we track from an EEO and affirmative action perspective, the people that we are looking at are the people who are reflected in the enterprise as a city. And so this policy reflects that as well.
Okay, so it's consistent with the way we've been treating them in other areas. Then I'm also curious about the charter department heads. I think that's always been often been a challenge or something to work on. They are appointed, and I know that it says the performance appraisal is a documented conversation between supervisor and employee about the employee's actual performance. And I think there's some question about who the supervisor is of the charter department heads. I know the way we've done it before, it's been different over the years, a 360 review and those things. Now we, I think, are having a performance review with the department heads that include chairs or maybe vice chairs of committee, the mayor's office, the city coordinator. And so that's the understanding is that those people would be acting in the capacity of supervisor, at least for this purpose, and that would be documented.
Yes.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I've also sometimes wondered, is there a way the executive committee can get more engaged in the review of charter department heads? I think we've talked about this before on and off on executive committees, because it seems like the way it is set up in the charter, that's kind of an expectation. We have that responsibility as this committee, and I'm not sure exactly how to connect that better. It might be that making sure that somebody from if the mayor's office is involved, then at least somebody is, or maybe the council president, vice president, staffs could be, or we could we could have an opportunity in some kind of a closed session to review those and make sure everybody's getting their performance reviews done. And I'm just putting that out there. I'm not expecting a clear answer at this point, but sometimes I worry that we aren't doing our due diligence to do performance appraisals and give support to our department heads and kind of understand and monitor the work. And I think the executive committee has the capacity that we could maybe engage in that a little bit more if there was a need. And it's just a concern I have, and I can leave it there. Thank you.
Other questions on items 2 or 3 or 4? Seeing none, I will move approval of the staff recommendation for items 2 and 3 and for referral to Ways and Means. No discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? And then do we need to receive and file item 4? So I will move to receive and file item number 4. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, that carries. And I was mistaken earlier, we actually have 2 items, item 5 and 6 for discussion here before we move to item 7, which would be a potentially closed meeting. So we will move on to item number 5, the 2016 politically appointed compensation plan, and that will be presented by Mr. Giles. Good morning, Mr. Giles.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Executive Committee. The item before you today is to modify and approve the adjustment for politically appointed employees. Back in 1995, the City of Minneapolis adopted a salary schedule for all appointed employees except two in the mayor's office, those two being the administrative deputy mayor and the executive assistant to the mayor. Those had a 4-step schedule, and it took 6 years to get to the top. In 2015, the City of Minneapolis revised the salary structure for appointed officials to be an 8-step schedule with annual step increases. Though slightly different from the appointed officials, we are recommending a revised salary schedule for the politically appointed employees. The proposed schedule will have 7 steps. It will still take 6 years to get to the top of the schedule. Employees will now enjoy an annual step movement as opposed to after 1 year and after 2 years and after 3 years. The schedule is created by creating a new top step, which is 2% plus $100 above the old top step. The $100 just makes the math work. Employees on December the 31st of 2015 will be placed on the salary schedule in a manner that's going to assure that they don't lose any money. On January the 1st, they would go into the new salary schedule and they would get a 1% adjustment to their schedule and be eligible for step progression in 2016. That step progression would be an additional 2%. The two titles in the mayor's office, we created a 2-step schedule for them, the top step being the same as was done for the other politically appointed, 2% above the old top step plus $100. In total, when we start looking at the group, we have an expenditure of $2.34 million per year. When we look at all the proposed changes and all the step progression for 2016, it actually exceeds our 2.5% financial direction by $15,500. We believe that it's going to be worth it because it's going to give us a more understandable kind of salary schedule. It's going to more immediately reward performance and longevity and more easily manage costs because we have a standard 2% adjustment in step costs every year. We're asking that you approve the recommendations and forward this to the Ways and Means Committee, the 5 recommendations that are in the description. Basically, adopting the salary schedule, adopting the transition plan, moving the titles, our people on the titles, approving the 1% increase, and authorizing the annual step adjustment.
Questions for Mr. Giles? I don't see any. Thank you very much. Then I will move the staff recommendation for item number 5 regarding the 2016 politically appointed compensation plan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, that carries. And we will move on to item number 6, the 2016 non-represented employees salary schedule. Mr. Giles.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the Executive Committee, this is the adjustment for the non-represented employees in the City of Minneapolis. We have approximately 150 non-represented employees in the City of Minneapolis, has an annual cost of $12,200,000. Human Resources Department is recommending a 2.25% increase to all salary components for the non-represented employees effective March the 1st of 2016. Sometimes you see us stagger these things because we've got 2 things that we have to manage when we start looking at our overall compensation plan. On the one hand, we have to deal with our internal equity components for the purposes of our equity compliance report. And on the other hand, we have to try to manage the cash flow on an annual basis. So when we start looking at what we are proposing here, the proposed adjustment actually represents exactly a 2.5% growth index for 2016 for our non-represented employees. We're simply asking that you make the adjustment or approve the adjustment of 2.25%, effective March the 1st of 2016 for the non-represented employees.
Any questions for Mr. Giles on that one? Seeing none, I will move approval of item number 6, the staff recommendation. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Giles. We now have item number 7, consideration of a collective bargaining agreement with the Emergency Communication Center Supervisors Bargaining Unit, January 2016 through December 2017. Because that is a matter of collective bargaining and therefore potentially a closed meeting, we will adjourn from chambers here and go to 3:15 for consideration.